The trade deadline has come and gone. Now it's time to evaluate the winners and losers while seeing if these deals have moved the needle for certain teams. The Houston Astros went big, the Texas Rangers went big, the LA Angels made some really interesting moves, whilst the Mets sold, the Dodgers missed out on a big pitching piece, and the New York Yankees made a complete mess of an already terrible situation. With that in mind, let's talk baseball. Good morning, good afternoon and good evening wherever you may be listening. This is Let's Talk Baseball. I'm your host, Tom Scholes, and I think it's time to really delve into the trade deadline. Now, it was Tuesday the 1st of August was the deadline, and it shut at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, which was around 11 p.m. British Time, and it was a fun, if not underwhelming, couple of hours where you're expecting a couple of teams to make some moves that never really materialised, that never really happened. But the fallout of the deadline has put a couple of things into, I would say, clear vision for certainly a lot of teams. You know, the deadline is always a good indication of what teams feel like they're good enough to go for it, and what teams feel as if it's not worth the hassle. They're not in a position where they're good enough to challenge, and they think that a couple of pieces can take them over the edge, but they're not bad enough to sell off some pieces. And I think we saw that in the contrast with a couple of teams where you will start off with. We'll just go straight into this. There's no point in hanging around because there's only really one topic to discuss, and that is the deadline. And the two winners that come to mind for me in this deadline are the Texas Rangers and the Houston Astros, as mentioned in the intro. The Rangers brought in Max Scherzer, Jordan Montgomery, Aroldis Chapman, Chris Stratton, and Austin Hedges. This was not on the deadline itself, but throughout the trade season. And what they have done has turned themselves into I wouldn't say super team, but they have a lot of players now that are, it's a super team, no, star-studded, yes. Because you look at it and you go, Max Scherzer, Aroldis Chapman, Jacob deGrom. I know he's out injured, but they've committed a lot of money to him. Corey Seager, Marcus Semien, John Gray, and Nathan Eovaldi. They have 2023 All-Stars, Adolis Garcia, Jonah Heim, and Josh Young. They have the best run differential in the American League, and they're leading the American League West. Eovaldi's out with an injury. Jacob deGrom is out with an injury. But that's why you go and get Max Scherzer. And that's why they're a winner. Because they recognised the position they're in. Where this is looking very, very likely to be the first time in 7 years, I believe, that they'll be in the playoffs. I'll be very surprised if they don't make it, whether that be winners of the West or in the wild card place, but it looks like they're going to make it. They realised what their needs were. They realised it was pitching. They realised the team that had two pitchers available of certain Hall of Fame status, and the team that they were on were on a downward trail. So you go in. You test the waters and see what you can get. And they got him. They got Max Scherzer, who wasn't performing amazingly well for the Mets. And I think when he spoke to the Mets about the season, admittedly, I saw this last night. I'm going to find the quote. But what GM Billy Epler told him, so this is in The Athletic from Max Scherzer. I talked to Billy, Scherzer told The Athletic. I was like, okay, are we reloading for 2024? He goes, no, we're not. Basically, our vision now is for 25-26. 25 at the earliest, more like 26. We're going to be making trades around that. I was like, so the team is not going to be pursuing free agents this offseason or assemble a team that can compete for a World Series next year. He said, no, we're not going to be signing the upper echelon guys. We're going to be on the smaller deals with free agency. 24 is now looking to be more of a kind of transitionary year. I don't personally believe it. I think when you have a player who you want out, who has a no trade clause, you might tell a couple of fibs, a couple of porcupines and a couple of lies to essentially say to him, look, mate, come on. There's no point. There's no point in staying around. You want to win, and we're not in the position to do so. So, it might be best if, for your own personal aspirations, if you go to a team that can win in sooner fashion. And the Rangers, they've got a good team. They've got some good players. They can challenge. They can challenge this year. They can challenge next year, especially with you. And they get their way. Both teams get their way. The Rangers get their man. The Mets get the man off the wage bill and get him out. And maybe, maybe they do retool for 25 and 26. But there's also a high possibility that they just wanted him out. And they might tell a couple of fibs to hammer that point home. You can't outright tell him, we need you to go. And the Mets have got their way. I think what the Mets have also realised, and we'll touch upon them very quickly, the Mets have realised that you can't win purely off of free agency and spending a lot of money on a lot of players. It's a lot harder than that. It's a lot tougher than that. It's a lot more nuanced than that. It's making smart trades. It's recognising the position you're in and trading some of your players who are in expiring contracts or don't fit the particular brand that you have at that particular time, in the sense of, if you're a team that isn't winning but you have players that want to win and are on a lot of money, you both sides of the equation work into an agreement and you move on. No hard feelings, off you go. And that's what the Mets, I think, have finally realised, and what Steve Cohen's finally realised, is going out and spending a lot of money on a lot of free agency signings does not equal success. And they will go back to the drawing board, and they will reevaluate how they go about this. And they move on. Their season, barring a miracle, is done. They expected to make the playoffs. I saw people picked them as World Series winners. Admittedly, I think I had them quite high as well, because I thought they would perform better than they have. But they retool and they go again. But what the Mets have also done, with their two big trades, or tradeaways, is they have intensified the battle in the AL West, because they have given the Texas Rangers Max Scherzer, who currently lead the West. And the team chasing them down, the team that everybody loves to hate, the Houston Astros, acquired Justin Verlander, again, after a trade with the New York Mets. And what the Mets have done is they have set up a Hall of Famer potential pitcher duel to see who comes out in the West, in the Wild West. And inadvertently, I think what the Mets have done is they have made that division even more exciting. And let's be honest, when the two teams played each other not too long ago, the atmosphere in Minute Maid Park was incredible. It was electric. It felt like a playoff game in the middle of the season. In the middle of July, it felt like a playoff game. So if there was a world where they meet each other in the off-season, and it's them two going at it, the two old gunslingers, head to head, yes, they're not themselves. They're a shadow of their former selves. But they both walk up to the mound with the game on the line, and it's Scherzer v Verlander, who started the season as teammates, who end the season, potentially, going one-on-one against each other. Hook it to the veins. I think this has put the Astros and the Rangers at the forefront of a lot of people's minds to win the American League. Because these are moves that, whilst what the Astros gave up was quite big. I saw some fans on social media not entirely happy with what they gave up for Verlander. They like Verlander, they love him from his last time at the club, but they also understand that, is he going to be the one that's taking them over the edge? I wouldn't be surprised if he did it before. I wouldn't be surprised if he does it again. There people. I think, in a way, some people have been, probably up until this past few weeks, have been almost sleeping on the Astros because they haven't been as electric as before. But, God, they got some good players. And the organisation, we'll give them credit where credit's due, okay? There's a lot of things to dislike about them. Mainly whatever happened in 2017 and how it affected your particular team. And the reaction from the players after the findings of that. But let's be true about this, okay? Everybody would want their organisation to be run the way the Houston Astros are run. They are winners. They know how to nurture talent. They know how to develop talent. They make good draft picks after good draft picks quite well. Whenever they had them anyway. They trade well. They strike while the iron is hot. And they have given their fan base for the past 6 years, almost every season, something to be proud of, something to be happy about, and to cheer for. Every year, they have more or less been a contender. And they are going to be that again. They may not go all the way, but when you add Justin Verlander and Kendall Graveman back into your lineup, I think it takes you to a different, maybe not like to the favourites level, not by any stretch of the imagination. That being said, I think they become one of 3 teams in the American League that I look at and go, you are dangerous, and no one want to play you in given circumstances. One of them is the Astros, one of them is the Rangers, and we'll come on to the other one in a minute. But I think that battle in the American League West has been amplified 10 times now, because they are both top teams who made big moves with big aspirations, and they are not going to go away quietly into the night. They are going to go blow to blow until the end of the regular season, and they will hopefully meet up in the playoffs. And if that does happen, it is must watch. Because not only are they 2 very good teams, but they're 2 heated teams with 2 heated fan bases. And I can't wait to see it. I was reading The Ringer and their piece on the winners and losers of the trade deadline. And they agreed with me on the winners. The Astros and the Rangers. But I went down to the losers. And they have the Orioles. And I was a bit surprised by that. And this is what they said: the Orioles are like the Rangers, a surprising first place team at the deadline, but they're also not like the Rangers, because it's unclear whether the Orioles actually realised they're a first place team at the deadline. Texas acted like it, strengthening its roster in an effort to maximise their opportunity in the playoffs. Baltimore, though, acted with nowhere near that amount of aggression, even though the Orioles had more prospect depth to trade than any other contender. The Orioles have so many good young hitters that they can't even play all of them together. And in a way, I understand what they mean. But I think it's a little bit harsh, because I look at Jack Flaherty, who they brought in, and he's described in that piece as only an average pitcher now. Not the top of the top rotation type the Orioles need. Statistically, they will back that up. If you look at the statistics of him, it does back that up. That being said, I think he's a good pitcher who is severely underrated in this market, that I think a lot of teams could have gone for. And, we'll talk about them in a minute, but the New York Yankees could have benefited from someone like Jack Flaherty. And on social media, I've wanted him in my team for a while. But I think what the Orioles have done is, yes, they may lack in terms of pitching, and the bullpen is heavily reliant on two people, Felix Bautista and Yanni Ocano. And it's... I don't know. They've added Fujinama from the A's, who wasn't great. Statistically for them, he wasn't great. But at the same point, I think they are riding, and this is the difference in, I think, the way that some people evaluate the sport, is if you look at the statistics, they've not made good moves. But they've added to a team that is on the crest of a wave, that is fearless. It might not go all the way, but I wouldn't want to play them. Camden Yards is a kind of place that, when it's rocking, you don't want to be there. It's, you can say that about any ground, any stadium in Major League Baseball in the playoffs. But when you saw the Sunday Night Baseball where they demolished the Yankees and they just took Luis Severino apart in the first inning, that, similar to the Houston Astros v Rangers series that I was on about earlier, was a snapshot into what it will be like on a big playoff night in Baltimore. I think with the fans flying as high as they are, with the team fearless as they are, and yeah, they could have given up more. They could have given up more young players for, they were inquiring about Shohei Ohtani. It was never going to happen, but they were inquiring about him. And some people will criticise them and say, oh, well, you should have done this, you should have done that, you should have given up more pieces for this star and take this one over the edge. What they have built there is a very good weapon. A very good team that is young, is dynamic, and I get the vibes from this team that if you were to add a superstar in, if you were to do what the Astros did in 2017 and trade for a Justin Verlander, if you were to do what the Astros did again in 2019 and get Zach Greinke, players designed to take you over the edge, but who are superstars, infinitely better than anybody you have in your rotation, would that upset a dynamic? And what I mean is, would the focus be too much on one person as opposed to the team effort? Not certainly from within, but the expectation would be, oh great, Verlander's pitching for the O's tonight. This is going to be great. And that's mainly because of, we'll say, reputation more than anything. But you look at what happens when you plug superstars into a team that isn't built for superstars. and this is what happens. The Orioles are a team that are flying high at the top of the AL East. They have staged a fantastic comeback to overhaul the Tampa Bay Rays. They don't look like they're slowing down anytime soon. And yes, they could have traded some more pieces. But let's be honest. If they don't win the World Series this year, that's not the end of the world. It's the start of something really, really good for them. It's the start of a really positive period. And if you think, if you were to get rid of, let's say, 3 of your top prospects, something the Orioles have an awful lot of, for Max Scherzer, for Justin Verlander, and you come up short, why? Well, what's the point? Yes, you make the move to dream, and I understand that, but don't ruin what you've built and what you've worked towards for one shot. For one shot that you're going to get, in theory, and I wouldn't count them out for the next couple of years when you look at the pieces they have. Stay calm. Don't wilt under the pressure of the situation you find yourself in. I think they've made some good moves. I wouldn't be surprised if they win the AL East. I wouldn't be surprised if they go to the World Series. I also wouldn't be surprised if they drop out in the first round, because inexperience, whilst it is a positive, can also be a negative in situations like that, especially if they were to come up against the Astros, who are just playoff demons. But I think the criticism of the Orioles is somewhat unfair, because I think they've got themselves a top pitcher, or a potentially top pitcher, and they've maintained a really good situation they found themselves in with their prospects. Because if they don't go again this summer, if they don't go again this season rather, they got next year. And that's not the end of the world. One team who made the moves, and realised the situation they were in, similar to the Rangers, somewhat similar to the Orioles, who realised the situation they're in but didn't want to rock the boat, with the New York Mets. Now, when you look at the players they've lost, they've got rid of a lot of players. Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander, David Robertson, Mark Canha, Tommy Pham, Eduardo Escobar, Dominic Leone. And the Mets' deadline is layered with context. If you were to look at the start of the season and you said to people, them players I've just listed will be sold at the deadline. They will not be there. The Mets will be floundering and they'll sell at the deadline. People wouldn't have believed you. They'd have laughed. They'd have said that's ridiculous. But that's what's happened. Fast forward a couple of months and the situation they find themselves in. They're way below 500. They're 6 games out of a playoff spot. And there's an argument to be made that given the situation they're in, they had the best deadline of anybody. On one hand, they deserve criticism for the team they built. And I've said it in previous episodes. They built a team full of superstars on a lot of money. That was not a team, but a very good individual team. It was a Diamond Dynasty team, an ultimate team of big names, but no real chemistry and no real direction. So on one hand, they deserve criticism for how they've built the team. On the other hand, they deserve praise for recognising the situation they were in and making the accepted moves and the right moves. They capitalised on the situation that found people wanting pitching and people wanting to make trades when there were no real superstars available, and they capitalised on it. I think it's something that going forward will end up being a positive. They got some good prospects who could help, and I think that's something that team needs. What they've done, in the long and short of it, is they have turned 3 old pitchers who are on a lot of money into 4 top 100 prospects. That's good work in my opinion. It's like, yes, next year might be a down year. Pete Alonso might be gone. Francisco Lindor might be gone. But it might just be the wake-up call. And the clip around the years that I think the Mets and the ownership of the Mets needed to kind of realise and go, look, if you want to win, this isn't an overnight thing. This takes a long time. Like, you go and read about how the Cubs won. You read about how the Astros won in 2017, and the effort and the years it took to get into that position. You look at, there's very few teams that can win instantly. Like, you look, even the Dodgers took years to develop certain players, and it was only until they added one or two pieces, like a Mookie Betts, to take them over the line. You look at the Yankees in 2009, they added a couple of pieces that took them over the line, but even the Yankees in the 90s were developed by players who were either youth players, draft picks, and farm players, prospects like Jeter, Posada. The list goes on. Bernie Williams, and of course, all of that. But it was also littered with Paul O'Neills, David Wells, not necessarily superstars, but players who were very talented, loved to win, and were in teams. They were team mode. And I think the Mets have to get back into the system of tons of stars does not work. Stars dotted around works when they are the final piece of the jigsaw. Like Verlander was in 2017. Like Sabathia was in 2009. The list goes on. That guy that can just give you a lift. That can just take you to another level and make you realise that you are a contender. And the Mets are not there yet. But in hindsight, were they meant to be? Yes, they spent a lot of money. And yes, they had a lot of big names. But let's be honest. That team had a lot of work that needed to be done. And even if they did make it into the playoffs somehow, who knows? Would they have even done anything with it? I don't know. Another winner that I want to talk about in the American League, the Angels. The Angels recognised their situation. And they went in. They went for it. Lucas Giolito, Reynaldo Lopez, CJ Cron, Randall Grichuk, Mike Moustakas, Eduardo Escobar. Mike Trout's coming back. Shohei Ohtani's there. They recognise the situation they're in. They've not been to the playoffs in 9 years, I think it was. I can't remember the last time a team went this much into a trade situation and into a deadline where they were so urgent to make moves, because they recognise what they're trying to do. Ohtani's probably gone. Right? I'd say, in terms of free agency rankings, he's low down on the list. But they had to try. They have to get him to the playoffs once. They have to get Mike Trout to the playoffs. And if they stand any chance of getting Ohtani back, this is how you do it. They don't have their chance of winning the World Series is minimal. Their chance of making the playoffs is not exactly great. However, at least they're going for it. At least they're trying to do something. They've looked at their situation and gone, you can either sell and just write it off, or you can have, you've got a situation where you've got two of the best players to ever play the game in the same team. You go for it. You don't hold back. You go for it. And they've made enough moves to make people go, you know what? They're not superstars, but they're doing it as best as they can. I respect their decision not to trade Ohtani, because I think he's good enough to get you into the playoffs. Now with these players alongside him, he's definitely good enough. And I think it also shows that at least they're trying to win. It would have been easy for them to trade Ohtani. They would have got so much back. So many prospects. And they didn't do it because they want to at least try. And I respect it. They recognised the situation. Their situation wasn't a great one, but their situation was clear in a sense. You either trade him or you give him pieces to work with. And what did they do? They gave him pieces to work with. Yes, it cost a lot. But if this is Ohtani's last go in Anaheim with the Angels, and if this is a chance to get him and Mike Trout into the playoffs, Christ, you do it. You at least try. And what's the worst that happens? Well, if you get into the playoffs and he leaves, he leaves. You got him into the playoffs. If you don't make the playoffs and he leaves, he leaves. But what happens? Regardless of that, it's a high chance he leaves. So you may as well try. They're not going to be back for a long time. But at least they're trying, and I like it. Next on the losers list. Bear with me, okay? Because this will take a while to dissect properly. Next on the list are the New York Yankees. I wasn't expecting much, because I'll preface this by saying this. The New York Yankees find themselves in a bad situation in one sense, and that is they are not bad enough to be sellers, and they are not good enough to be buyers. They are not leading the AL East. They're not even in the wildcard places. But they're not 6 games back. They're not 7 games back. Not even 5 or 4. How many games back are they? I hear you ask. Let's check. They are 3.5 games back. There's still a chance they make the playoffs. Granted, it's limited. Granted, it's unlikely. But there's a chance. And if you have a chance of making the playoffs, and if you have glaring holes in your team, left field, centre field, third base, maybe even starting pitching, what do? I'll tell you what you don't do. You don't bring in a replacement level reliever who has 0.0 WAR in Kenyon Middleton. And you definitely don't bring in a pitcher with a career 7.20 ERA. Why don't you do that? Because it makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense to do that when they are not issues that you need. You don't need to address them. If I can't drive, I don't go and buy a car when my house is flooding. I get a plumber. If I'm hungry, I'll go get some food. But it's got to be food I like. I'm not actually get food for the sake of food. And it's the same here. Sometimes doing nothing is worse than doing something wrong. Okay? What the Mets have done, and we'll take it back to the Mets, is they recognised their situation, then they did something about it. If the Yankees had turned around yesterday and brought in Dylan Carlson and traded Harrison Bader and IKF for some other players and brought in a third baseman, literally any third baseman, I would have looked at it and thought to myself, you know what? At least they made moves in the positions they were meant to make moves in, and they traded away some expiring contracts and got some worth for them whilst they could. Instead, they did none of that. Bader and IKF are still there. Bader wasn't in the lineup against the Rays last night. They lost. of course. He didn't play. He was taking batting practice. Josh Donaldson's been taking batting practice, who most people thought that when he was put on the 60-day IL, that would be it. We'd never see him in a Yankees shirt again. Guess what? I have a pretty bad feeling he's going to be in a Yankees shirt again. And then Brian Cashman came out. I've got to read this, because a lot of people are quite vitriolic towards him, towards Aaron Boone, towards Hal Steinbrenner. I'm not part of the vitriolic crew, because I think it's not that important as to criticise them as human beings. Criticise the jobs they're doing, and criticise Brian Cashman, the general manager, but don't criticise Brian Cashman, the human, because you don't know him. That's how I look at it. But when he gives out lines and press conferences like he did yesterday, it's very hard to find any defence for what he said.
Rather be obviously in a more defined spot where he'd be 3.5 games up in the postseason, or 10 games back, give you a better, clearer picture, but that's not where we've put ourselves. So, we kind of approach this deadline, which is not, in the last few days, but over the last, coming weeks, especially, where we were kind of driving on a lot of different lanes, listening to opportunities. So, being opportunistic buyers, if anything made sense, and certainly opportunistic sellers. So, and as we got out of the gate a little bit here in the second half with the struggles, the frustration of how we've played recently, it became more cautious buyers. When we were kind of staying in touch with everybody, there was a lot of clubs we were heavily discussing things with that I think their intentions were potentially sellers. Their teams got hot. They became buyers. So, there's a lot of different changes in the marketplace. It wasn't I'd say it wasn't a deep trade deadline in terms of options. So navigating it wasn't easy, but we were open-minded to a lot of different things, and we stayed engaged, every step of the way. But, it felt when the dust settled, no one was able to pry anything away from us that we felt was more valuable than where we're sitting in the standings at 3.5 games out still, and having a chance to find a way to get it together and take a shot. So.
Were your conversations today geared more towards trying to potentially make deals with guys who have expiring contracts, or was it more in the way of adding players?
We're open to a lot of different conversations and permutations. We've had a lot of different hits on controllable players and players that are considered rentals with us, and then at the same time, we were trying to do the same, where we import controllable players, and what are the rental prices, and seeing if we can upgrade in the areas of need for us.
Gary,
you said you weren't really in a defined spot. How would you define this team's direction for the rest of the season?
Obviously, we're in it to win it. So, we stayed the course because of that. Obviously, we've got Nestor coming back, as well as Loizaga soon, and we know that we have better baseball in us, although we haven't shown that and proven that. But we've got 2 more months to show that now. So ultimately reinforced a little bit of the pen, with the Middleton acquisition. And there was a designation of assignment, last second out of Texas. So we grabbed Spencer Howard real quick, an option to Scranton. Certainly we were aggressively trying to do more and be open-minded to a lot of things coming our way. But when the dust settled, this is obviously, we stayed the course with what we had, because we felt that given the options that were available coming our way, or the options that we were unable to secure, this was the best play for us with the team we had, that we still are within striking distance, and let's try to find a way to figure our way through it and get ourselves in and see what we can do if we can get there. Stay tuned. We'll see if we can turn those jeers into cheers. So we'll see. Obviously it's all going to depend on the wins and losses. If we can somehow find a way to get back on the winning way and get that contagious thing going, and clearly, a lot of that, put all those puzzle pieces can fall back into place. I know we're a different team when Judge is on us, and he's on us now again. So I wish it wasn't that way, but obviously I know people have, kind of seen how, we've played without him and when we've played with him, and so hopefully, I already feel that he's had a positive impact. Clearly, he's one of the best players on the planet and one of the best players in this generation. So hopefully that'll be contagious, and we obviously need everybody to step up, and look forward to seeing if they're capable of doing that. Because we could have gone a different way. We could have obviously taken a wrecking ball to it, but I honestly felt, based on the opportunities that presented themselves, that didn't make any sense whatsoever, and that that kind of forced us into a double down, 3.5 games out. Let's double down and go for it.
That's stupid. The series before the All-Star break was against the Cubs. Cody Bellinger was incredible. Make the trade then. You needed him. They wanted to sell. What happened? You didn't go for him. You hung around, and this is what's happened. It's ridiculous. They were 500, and they've gone on a good run, and now they've changed their mind, and now they're not selling. I can't believe that this is how it's happened, because what's going on here? God, it's annoying. It's a very, very annoying situation. Because I feel like the fans will always make decisions and make claims as if they know a lot. Right? And I understand that. But this is one of the few times where I think it's true. The New York Yankees has been a poorly assembled team for some time. There are not enough left-handed hitters for a team that plays a lot of games where the cheat code is for left-handed hitters. You have Aaron Judge and Garrett Cole in their prime, and there is a very high chance that they miss the playoffs. You either go all in, like the Angels have done, to capitalise on whatever has happened, or you do what the Mets have done and realise your situation and try your best to reset, whilst not getting rid of too many great players. What has now happened is the Yankees have done neither of those things, and they've stood still. Actually, no, that's unfair to say. They haven't stood still. They brought in 2 pitchers that they don't need. They're going to miss the playoffs. They're going to finish bottom of the AL East. And they're going to be so far behind the curve on what a lot of other teams are doing because they don't have enough depth for it. Anthony Volpe is, I'm sure, a lovely guy and is a talented player. But he should not be the undisputed starting shortstop of the New York Yankees at this point. He might develop into it, and I hope for his sake he does. But he wouldn't play for any other top team. So why should he be playing for the Yankees? They missed out on a lot of players to get this guy into the team, and they held back on a lot of deals to keep this guy in the organisation. And he's been parachuted in, well, say parachuted in, but he started the season in a situation, in a team that is not suitable for the development of a young player in this rank. Aaron Boone, who I'm sure is a lovely guy, cannot and should not be a manager in Major League Baseball. Hal Steinbrenner is a man who will spend when the time is right, and he is commendable for that, but I don't believe he is the guy. He's not the guy to take you over the line anymore. Mainly because the problems start with the top of the rung, and it works its way. It works itself down. The simple solution is one that will not happen. The New York Yankees should move player, manager, GM on. But they're not going to. They're not going to. There are fans wanting them to lose and miss out on the playoffs, hoping that something will change. But it won't change. because Boone and Cashman have long-term deals. And they're not going to be paid out, barring a disaster. Until that comes, until the day comes when the fans have enough, are vocal about the situation the team finds themselves in, nothing will change. This is the New York Yankees. This is the standard bearer for Major League Baseball. They are not playing like the standard bearer, and they are not acting like the standard bearer. They need to up their game, they need to modernise, and they need to make this right. Adding 2 pitchers at the deadline is not this. Thank you for listening. I had to get that off my chest. It's been sitting there for a couple of days, couple of weeks, and it finally peaked last night. This has been Let's Talk Baseball. Thank you very much for listening. Join me for the next one. Have a good day.